can some of the world's top investors to Bosnia and Balkans region, especially from Asia. So maybe you can tell us more about your experience in investments, because that's what the topic we have right now.
Sure. Thank you, Tatiana, and thank you, you as the president of the Student Union at Regents and Regents for co-hosting this Q&A coffee with me. I've been a big fan of your work and your university, and I'm glad we are talking today. My experience, I did masters in mathematics many years ago, and I pretty much moved into an M&A world, not in a traditional structures by going and working for an investment bank or hedge fund, but off the back of my own initiatives and my own sort of direction, which I felt was more suitable to somebody like me. I sort of didn't follow the sort of trajectory of most of my friends who went straight in the city, for the reason that when I first came to the UK in early 90s, there was a raging war in Bosnia and former Yugoslavia at the time. So as one of the Samirs stipendees, I just felt even the vision of somebody who offered me a scholarship at the time when it was difficult to obtain one. My whole character sort of was being built before my eyes without me actually knowing and understanding why it was happening. So the investment world and the recessions of the early 90s, the recessions of noughties, the recession of 2008, and now COVID 2020 as we're entering a new recession, is something that has always kind of been around me in a different structures and different setups. The recessions that hit Yugoslavia at the time during the war was something that's very difficult to imagine, and it's not your typical recession that we've seen around the world, but it has a very similar sort of components and characteristics to what we're going through now. In my own life as a co-investor, investor, entrepreneur, I've always approached it with the view that there are opportunities when there are difficult times. And in every difficult situation, there are also winners and losers. And I take the view that what's happening right now, however difficult it might be, is also going to pose lots of opportunities. And I've always followed the sort of road that was created by the group of people I've worked with. We did take a look at the distressed assets around the world, between Asia, between the sort of Europe and London in particular. And because of that, we have managed to always come out of different opportunities with the view that despite all the challenges and despite all the risks we took, in some instances, we managed to balance out the portfolio. We managed to actually come out in the positive.
Okay, interesting. So what is your most famous or your most big deal in the investment world?
I mean, it's difficult to talk about the most famous and most and the biggest in that sense, because I tend to work with big players, big investment banks, big hedge funds, big institutional investors from around the world. And I often am in the, call it the background from the deal origination all the way to the deal closure, wearing different hats and managing investors, managing the investment opportunities, managing the legal structure around it, et cetera, et cetera. So, we've had deals by purchasing banks, by purchasing companies, restructuring them, relisting them at various stock markets around the world, buying the assets that were in a very difficult sort of situations, buying them out of the bankruptcy estates because of the fact that they had issues, but also they had all the legalities around it. So I wouldn't necessarily pick out one deal over the next. I would more pick out the fact that we always approached it with a great deal of due diligence. Every deal is unique. Whether you are delisting the company from the stock market, whether you are buying a company out of the bankruptcy estate, or whether you are investing and picking out the companies with high growth potentials, you have to approach it as a unique proposition every single time. Of course, the business world and investment world have got their systems and processes and the rules and various rules of thumb. But at the end of the day, business and investment is all about people. I think the balance sheet and the bottom line is one thing, but when it comes down to talent spotting, which is something that the family offices have really gone into over the past 10 to 20 years, whether you talent spot a hedge fund manager, whether you talent spot an investment banker, whether you talent spot an entrepreneur whose company is worth 10 million but has a potential to be the next unicorn, it is all about doing a great deal of due diligence and the track record and checking the track record of these people who basically own companies and who have divisions. The key thing for everything we do is to align our own ambition, our own purpose, our own vision with those of the people behind these companies and these investment opportunities.
Great, thank you very much. So let's move to the main topic. What is your, because now we just have like these 3 weeks of a new world, and can you tell us your thoughts? What do you think? How do you see it? How, because like we can face changes every day, every hour, something close, something changes. So what is your vision for this moment? Let's talk about the current.
I mean, Tatiana, you and I spoke the other day about what we need right now, apart from the right leadership, apart from the right direction, the skill set that we need as individuals, as corporations. And I mentioned to you a few years ago, I met a Professor Grayling, who's one of the biggest philosophers of this country and one of the biggest philosophers in the world. And when I asked him many years ago, Professor, what are the skills we ought to teach our children who will be in the labor market in 10, 15, 20, 30 years? He said, Samir, the two key skills that we ought to teach our children, but also our adults, is adaptability and thinking outside of the box. And now think of the current situation. I've just been on the call with my Chinese partners and friends this morning, so telling them that they can tune in, and they said to Samir, very kind of you to invite us, but in China, the restaurants have just opened after 3 months of the self-isolation and the quarantine. And it's very difficult to convince any of our friends and partners to actually tune into your talk because we are enjoying food and wine in China. Now, that's great that they're ahead of the curve. However, I've got to be honest with the listeners today, but the wider audience as well. I think the current situation is going to go on longer than we all initially thought. I must admit, when this first came up, I was quite so cynical about it, and I thought, come on, it's just another flu. So I was somewhat flippant, despite all my experience, that you know, we're going to get out of this. We're strong. We sort of have a great character in the times of crisis, and we'll be able to deal with it. However, the more I've read into it, the more I've talked to various people, from astrologers to mental health campaigners and doctors to investors, the more I realize that we have to embrace ourselves for a long-haul flight here. I personally think the situation at its current format is going to take 3 to 6 months rather than 3 to 6 weeks. I think we're going to have restrictions imposed on us by governments from around the world for around 12 months. I think it's very important that we accept the fact that we have to adapt to the current situation and use all we can in terms of reaching out to the right people, discussing it with the right people, and really quickly switching our lives and our businesses to the fact that we will not be able to do proper face-to-face. Life goes on as normal because the banking sector and the financial sector and the support mechanisms around us must carry on. We can't leave people in difficult situations and leave them to their own devices. I think I mentioned, Tatiana, to you as well, my early experience of coming from the war-torn country where our capital was under siege for 1425 days. And then I remember my own parents told me the story that I was going to go to London for 3 months. I was going to perfect my English, stay with my auntie and uncle and my cousins, as I used to come here very regularly before the war. And then within 3 months, I'm going to come back and continue with my studies. Obviously, the 3 months turned into 3 decades. And what was the key thing there? I, unlike many people who happened to be in Bosnia at the time, was lucky and privileged that I could, although very sort of traumatically, watch what was unfolding there on the TV screen in London. But I was in direct contact with people on the ground there who technically had to self-isolate for 3.5 years. Now, during the course of the war in former Yugoslavia, but in Bosnia in particular, these people had the hope. These people had the indications that the war was going to last 1, 2, 3 years rather than 4. These people also had to adapt to the situation of getting up, exercising, going out, despite the fact that often going out and waiting in the queues to get bread or the basic essentials ended up in the massacres, in the marketplaces, on the streets of Sarajevo. They had to accept the fact that when they go out, there are snipers, and the snipers shot hundreds of people dead in Sarajevo, including children. There were mortar attacks. Early on, there were airplanes landing bombs. And later on, the front lines around them were literally hundreds of yards away. They could see them from the windows of their houses or their flats, because that's how close they were. So now taking the parallel between us in the current situation, where I hear lots of people complaining about the queues in front of the supermarkets, lots of people complaining about the fact that they can't go and meet and see the loved ones. We just have to embrace what's happening right now as much as we can. And I think we're going to touch on the mental health issues a bit later on. And we really have to direct our energy and our sort of abilities to rise above any challenges and any difficulties in the best possible way. I think we have to share it with the wider community. I think we have to try and spread positivity and encouragement, because with the media, the way it's played for decades now with scaremongery, it's not easy. I mean, to be frank, I don't watch the news. I don't watch the new announcements because I know I'm going to learn about them one way or another. They're going to be imposed on me. And I really try to use 20 hours a day or 18 hours a day to be as constructive with my family, with my friends, with my business partners, with my sort of extended networks, and see what we can learn from each other. I think this is both the curse and the blessing in disguise, in terms of us as the human race coming back to the basics, realizing that, things like this could happen over and over again. And I'm not going to point a finger of blame at anyone, because I don't believe in the blame culture. And we just have to see what it is we can do. What is the new status that we have now assumed? What's the new value that we can create? What's the new knowledge that we can create, and how we can transfer that to the wider audience and take all a little bit of the leadership role, rather than just sit back and do nothing and wait for this to end, because frankly speaking, it's not going to end anytime soon. And even when it ends, it's never going to be the same again. And we will suffer, all of us, a traumatic experience of the fact that we were technically imprisoned in our own houses for months on end. And now we might actually attend the outside world with the paranoia that there might be lots of passive COVID carriers who might infect us one way or another. So the mental strength and the power of the mind is going to come in become much more important than ever before.
Thank you. I have a question related actually this changes in flexibility. So on your opinion, which businesses, which kind of like areas will die forever after this? For example, some successful and good investments opportunities which were on the top 1 month ago and which will never recover after the situation. What is your opinion?
I mean, it's a very good question, Tatiana. I don't like to say or predict that any industry will die out forever. I think many industries, in particular the hospitality, in particular the sort of anything to do with a direct contact in the foreseeable future will be massively affected. And some of them, businesses, not the industries, will never recover. On the flip side, anything to do with the online, anything to do with the artificial intelligence and technology, anything to do with almost serving of the community and the society at large will probably massively benefit from the current situation. I was tuning into one of the talks last night about the guys who do the blue collar recruitment. And because right now the blue collar labor force is in a huge demand, they're actually experiencing a huge peak in the demand of their services, and they're actually fast forwarding and fast tracking the investment around to actually go further when it comes down to the opportunities and enter the US market, because I believe the US market will be hardest hit. I think they took the whole situation initially, again, very flippantly, but it's a very difficult country with so many states to control, because every state is the law to itself. And it's not easy even for President Trump to be able to manage how the whole pandemic is going to affect the United States. So I think things alongside the lines of the sustainable development goals that the United Nations have really mandated for many global businesses around the world. I like this 17th ones because there's 17, which is the partnership for the goals behind the 16 prior ones. I think we're going to see a more uniting of forces and uniting of visions and co-sharing. So I think that the kind of, we talked about sharing economy for quite a few years now as the new big thing to invest in. I think that's going to definitely benefit. So I hope I answer your question. I wouldn't like to point at any of the businesses or any of the industries that will totally fail right now. I think it's very difficult for me to say that.
But you mentioned co-sharing, but according to the current situation, when you kind of like get the virus from some things, you know, for example, if we're talking about, I don't know, cars or anything kind of where we have a common ownership, that's the risk to get some, you know.
I didn't mean it co-sharing in the physical way. I meant in a co-sharing in a way, kind of virtual way, because that's going to be our reality for in the foreseeable future. I think I'm reading more about the electrical vehicles and the ecological projects really gaining the momentum. I've been involved with Formula E over the past 2 years, promoting it in the Balkans to try to give the whole region a new image of the region that's after technology and sustainability. I'm talking to lots of people in the space of actually technology, ecology, even esports, because esports, lots of people think are all about gaming, which to a large extent there are. But I recently met somebody who runs the British Esports Association, who's recently worked very closely with the Royal Force and the British military here in creating the gaming rooms for some of the soldiers that have come from very difficult front lines in Afghanistan and the Middle East in particular, and who felt so isolated, so anxious and so depressed after the real kind of wartime sort of positions and situations. So we're seeing, for example, the Formula E races have all been cancelled, All the sporting events have been cancelled, as we know, including the Olympics in Tokyo. But people are really fast moving in going online and engaging with the crowds around the world. I think we're going to see that united front as a result of almost a fast transformation and overnight transformations of many businesses and many individuals' lives in that direction. And I think that's a positive. I think we will appreciate the importance of technology. But I think after this, call it a war against COVID-19, we will also appreciate more the kind of human touch and face-to-face interactions, which were just normal to us. I mean, I often talk about London being a very, very tough and vicious environment because you're literally framed in a matter of seconds by people you meet at various networking events as somebody who can offer something or somebody who can't offer something. And you are sort of bracketed and boxed into the cold, warm, or hot lead, because obviously everyone's after business. Everyone wants to gain a new opportunity and open a new network. But in actual fact, people have forgotten and lost themselves that in actual fact, the real business is done through the common purpose. So if we have the common purpose to change the world, to improve our bottom line, to create something together and make it successful, profitable, and somewhat philanthropic, we have to approach it in a very different way. I don't take business cards to any networking events. I don't often attend many, but when I do, because I just don't want to give cards away for the sake of it. But I'm often surrounded by people who literally in the last 5 minutes of the networking event realize that they are about to lose a business opportunity that is never for real. And they start going around the room in the last 5 minutes, panicking and giving their cards away. And I often say to them, sorry, we haven't even spoken for a minute. I really don't want your card because I don't even know who you are and what you do. And I really don't want you to waste paper on me because we're very unlikely to connect. So I genuinely think there's going to be a big mind shift when it comes down to the current crisis we're facing. I think if we play this right, it's going to be hugely beneficial to us as a human race. Of course, there are going to be many, many people who will be affected with the loss of jobs, with the loss of opportunities, with so many investments on pause and on hold right now because everybody's just waiting to see how the markets will bounce back, and the markets always bounce back. There will not be the crash of the financial market. It will not be the end of the world. None of that is actually true. Whatever the media is trying to feed us and scare us, we must take the situation in our own hands and do our bit. We must follow the guidance of the governments in terms of the social distancing and everything else. I'm a big promoter of that. But we genuinely will benefit as a human race, as a society, if we play this right. But we must embrace ourselves for a long haul flight, which will go years beyond the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, we're seeing China bouncing back in the record time, but I also know China is facing a huge, huge challenge to stop the comeback of COVID-19. And everyone who knows enough about the way these viruses operate actually is pretty confident, if not 100% sure, that the COVID-19 will come back to China in early autumn. And they might have to go through it again, just like we will in the Western world.
Yeah, currently that's what happens now, because all European people and people from America, they are knowing that China is kind of safe right now. They're coming back and bring the virus again. So that's because if you don't watch news that much, I watch it one time per day, so I can tell it for you. So actually, I had a question about China, because you have Chinese partners, and I wanted to know your opinion. You know, because when this COVID situation happened, there was a one kind of version of the situation that Chinese people, they kind of created this virus or spread those virus to create the collapse. So owners of the main shares of Chinese companies, they started to sell those shares, and very cheap. Chinese people bought it for a good price. It kind of like brought back the ownership of all plants and businesses they have inside China. Is it true? What do you think?
Well, Tatiana, conspiracy theories really boom in the times of crisis. I mean, we had them in the war in Bosnia in terms of the conspiracy of the certain leadership against certain members of the army and the generals. And of course, there's been conspiracy around this from the day one, and maybe even before it even started. I don't believe, having spent the last 20 years with the Chinese friends, family members, investors, working very closely with one of the biggest calligraphy masters of China, who is got a global vision of promoting peace and prosperity for all, not the Chinese. I don't believe the Chinese are behind this. I don't believe that the Chinese have created it to rule the world. However, I can't blame the Chinese because they are in an incredibly powerful and cash liquid position not to commercially benefit from the investment opportunities that are inevitably happening because of the fact that the Western world, America and Europe in particular, aren't and weren't prepared for something like this. I don't think many people believe they could be this bad. And we've seen it with the President of Serbia and President of America in the first week, just a month ago, literally joking about this being a flu and being something they can deal with and being something like that will just disappear. And within days, they changed the rhetoric and they realized, having consulted the medical experts, that this is not a joke. And this is going to affect the economy. This is going to send us into a recession overnight. And we've not even properly recovered from 2008 and recession and the Lehman Brothers collapse. So I think if the Americans, the Brits, the Arabs were in a position to benefit commercially from the investment opportunities, they would do the same thing. I think the Chinese, because of the way in which China is ruled, it's still a sort of a form of communist leadership where the number one tells the rest of the country how they should behave and they follow it. I think we saw that with the press conference Putin gave, which lasted 30 seconds. He came on air. He said, basically, as of today, you either go indoors for 14 days or you face 5 years behind bars. End of conference. So why the leadership like that really works is because people listen, and people in these parts of the world have been used to challenging, testing times, difficulties, hardship, a lot more than we have been in the Western world, where what we thought was just the way of life, for lots of people was huge privilege and something that they couldn't even touch. So this just shows you, when you have got the experience of hardship, when the global hardship happens like it's happening to all of us now, no matter whether you're rich or poor, we technically being in our house prison, we have to now find the coping mechanisms to be able to do that. As I mentioned early on in our sort of conversation, there are going to be many winners and many losers when it comes down to investment opportunities, when it comes down to the businesses that will go bust, and it comes down to the businesses that will go through the roof. So the Chinese are only doing what they're supposed to be doing in the market economy, in the global village, and in the investment world.
Thank you. So the next question is actually about the investment opportunities. So now we have this uncertain situation, and of course shares like going mad, and some people, for example, I know they're buying searching for lands in Italy, because Italy right now is one of the worst country in case of the COVID-19, and of course the price was going down, so they're kind of buying those lands, you know, assuming that it will go up again and will become normal in soon. So in this global situation, for example, when US is the worst in case of the cases, in the number of cases, you know, what is the opportunity where, like, for example, so some people think that they have to keep cash. For example, a lot of big businessmen, they literally said, like, guys, don't do nothing, just keep cash for now. Some people say, like, okay, try to invest in your business and push it, even if it seems like you shouldn't do it. So what is your advice? Like, what do you think in this uncertain situation, especially first few months when people literally don't understand what happened? There is an opportunity, you're right. So what is the opportunity, where to go, what is the, give us some tricks.
Sure. I mean, Tatiana, there's no tricks as such. I read a lot about what the big guys talk about, the guys that are perhaps a couple of decades ahead of me, and also a sort of with a huge repertoire of the successful investment deals they've done, from Warren Buffett to George Soros to Bill Gates to Michael Bloomberg, to the people that, you know, whether you like them or hate them, they are really, they have mastered the sort of investment strategy, and they've really done it often in the most difficult times, and the times of crisis and recessions. So Italy, I don't know enough about whether that would be something that I would entertain myself. I think the key thing when you're looking at the investment opportunities, and I spoke to one of the hedge funds in London that I've just launched in this times of crisis, who are looking at equities long and short, mostly European. The fund managers and the owners, they are telling me that it's never been a better opportunity for them to pick the stock that, in their opinion, is going to perform. However, it's going to change their own business model, and it's going to really suit those who are looking at the long-term returns rather than short and medium-term returns. I think with short and medium-term returns, the stock market is going to have the clear winners and clear losers. And I think my advice to anyone who's looking, from real estate to stock markets to hedge funds to the VCs or any other investment opportunities, is to do an extra deal of due diligence. I think now the question is going to be of doing and narrowing your spectrum of investment opportunities from maybe what would have been 5% of the deals and the deal flow they would look at, down to maybe 2%. Really have the people around you who know about tactical investment and investment in terms of crisis, the people that have sailed through the oceans in the months of January rather than the month of June, July, in the ocean sort of times when the weather isn't really on your side. And these are going to be the important decisions that any investor will have to make. I don't genuinely believe in keeping cash if you have the potential to invest. Is the right thing to do in boom or bust. In actual fact, cash or any currency is king in the times of crisis, even a lot more than in the times of boom, because you have a lot less competition, just because the human sort of psychology dictates that we have to now sit back and wait and see what's going to happen. So technology is going to really, the right technology platforms are going to boom in this. I think one's got to look at them. The real estate market will have its opportunities as well. It had it before the recession. It will have it during the recession. So one's got to, again, be very, very knowledgeable about where they sit. I don't know how Italy is going to take the entire thing. And my problem with Italy is liquidity of the market. So you might be able to acquire something that is basically very low in price right now. But will you be able to exit that investment opportunity? Is something I would question when advising people to go into the Italian market. I think we have to surround ourselves with the people who know what they're talking about, the people who have weathered the storm many times over. I think the kind of the investment club structures that are going to be formed during this crisis are going to basically unite people behind a common purpose. and the kind of the sense of being able to learn through the process, because making a good investment is one sort of characteristic of people who invest all the time. But what does that investment give you back in return, in addition to cash? I think we're going to see a lot more strategic investors coming forward. I think we're going to see a lot more people from Asia coming forward and really joining forces. The way the Chinese doctors and the Chinese companies have offered to sort of help hospitals around the world, I genuinely think we're going to be a lot more united than before the actual crisis. And I think if we play our cards right, all of us within our own constraints could come out of this as winners, as leaders, as those who can really inspire the next generation and learn from all the mistakes we will make also in this process.
Thank you. Let me see, I think. Okay, yeah, there is a question like if you're still accepting new people into the Mayfair Investment Club, and who do you accept?
It's a new thing that has emerged very much as a result of my years of mentoring and developing business opportunities for other entrepreneurs and investors. And a few months ago, after a year of development, we actually at Regents University launched the Mayfair Investment Club, which main purpose is really to pick out the talent that wants to go into the world of investment as opposed to entrepreneurship, who really wants to learn the ropes of the investment strategies and the tactical investment, and who really want to build themselves up as the leaders of tomorrow. So it's a rather non-typical way how we deal with the people interested in it. Of course, it's designed to be by invitation only club. It's designed to pick out the caliber of people that have the right mindset and they really want to embark on a journey of future investors, go behind the scenes and meet some of the masterminds and people who have put together very successful investment portfolios, have exited a number of different companies successfully, and have really returned investment for themselves and the investors. So as it's a new thing, yes, we do have the doors semi-open, I would say. We aim to host a series of seminars on that subject and why we believe the purpose of the Mayfair Investment Club and the foundation that we want to build sort of adjacent to that. And I'll be talking this weekend to somebody who might want to get involved to help us build a foundation because we want to fast track the foundation launch in addition to the actual club. So we keep our eyes and ears open. We want to attract the right people from around the world. We want to use the COVID-19 as something that will really fast track our vision and mission for the creation of the new and better future, alongside the lines of the Sustainable Development Goals and the social impact and impact investment that we believe in. I'm a great believer that sustainability isn't just something that is about the society and it's about the economy. It's also about the sustainability of investments and investment opportunities. I think we have to be successful, profitable, and sustainable across the board to be able to make a bigger difference in today's world and in today's society, notwithstanding the fact that every single one of us on the call today or out there can and continue to make a difference.
Thank you. My next question is, let me check the time, it's 12:45, so we're gonna go to the end and soon. But the next question is, I know that you're an expert in arts and you also kind of, you're into like inside the sports. Question, what will happen with the arts market? Because it's kind of, it's not the necessary things right now in case like when we're at home and like we don't know what will happen in 6 months, and what will happen in sports, because for example if 1 year sports people won't be able to properly train and gather in teams, you know, they're kind of lose qualifications. What's your prediction? What will happen?
They'll, as you rightly point out, Tatiana, they'll be massively hit, and I think considering the less, art falls in a category of luxury, so people will try and put luxury on hold. Not everyone, but in every, if we look at the war times. And if we look at the art that emerges out of the war situation, whether it's the Balkans in the 90s, whether it's the Second World War in the 40s, I genuinely think that the art scene will boom because it will enable artists to now stay at home and without the pressure of having to sell, create the work that actually resonates with the society. I think we're going to see the maybe disappearance of a very, very commercial art as it was being, in a way, flogged into the marketplace. So we were almost dictated what to buy and who to buy because the media played a vital role in that, and some super collectors did too. I remember people like Marina Abramovic, who's originally from former Yugoslavia, is one of the biggest artists of today, and many other artists from that region in the 90s became successful because they continued developing art during the war and after the war. I think the art scene will be hit commercially, but in terms of the concepts, in terms of the real value for the society, I think it's going to be massively sort of beneficial to us as a society. And we might all actually come back to the importance of art for our soul. I always looked at art as the food for soul, as our cultural dividend that we must all consume, regardless of the fact whether you study history of art, fine art, or I genuinely believe and always believed, and that was part of my TED talk many years ago, that art is for everyone. No matter whether you're rich and poor, you must consume it. And you can consume it whether you go to the local artist studio, whether you go to the auction house, whether you go to a gallery in Mayfair or anywhere you might live. It's free of charge. Most museums in this country have been free of charge for a long, long time and enable people to actually benefit. The sporting industry is going to have it tougher than the artists. And the main reason for that is become a huge commercial affair out there. The sportsmen and women must train, and that's not easy, being able to actually train. I get up every morning at 7, I do 5K run with the family. Actually, all 5 of us do, including the kids 11, 8, and 7. We train in the evening with Barry's Bootcamp online, and there's so many online training platforms right now, which allow you half an hour to an hour of the cardio. So it's very important to keep in check and in touch with the physical exercise. However, if you are a top footballer like Ronaldo, Messi, or if you are a top tennis player like Djokovic or Nadal, it will be tough. However, winners are winners in any situation, and I think this is where the kind of sports psychology and the human psychology is going to play a huge part. I think we have to look up to people who have won against the odds, and for inspiration and motivation. I have to say, I think we have to join forces with them and help them where necessary and play our own part and lead by example. We must not let COVID-19 break us. We must not let any virus bring us down. We must continuously find inspiration in the positivity that's out there, and there's plenty of positivity out there, not just negativity. And we must be prepared to bounce back when the time is right. We mustn't rush, because if we rush, we are going to prolong the agony that many will be facing for a long, long time. I mean, I'm hearing and somewhat reading that the Alliance for Anxiety and Depressions are so overwhelmed with the number of calls. People aren't coping really well. People are really struggling, students included, of having to do the online thing and not being able to actually get out, get for a sort of research trip, whatever they're doing. So I think we must be united in this fight against something that has hit us for a reason, and we must come back to the basics, and we must join forces to win.
And we have a question related to arts and sport and mental health from Dimiana. She asked, like, studies have shown that arts and sports both aid in mental health. Would you think that it could potentially become a trend with investments?
Absolutely, absolutely. I genuinely think that as a mental health campaigner with Mind Charity, and recently we as the family have joined Anna Freud Charity, have been a great believer that like physical health, mental health is absolutely crucial for a well-balanced and happy life, but also happy working environment. I think we're going to be hearing more and more talks on that. The famous example is Prince Harry talking about his mental health issues after the death of his mother, Princess Diana, and that's really brought out it in the open. I think he's done with William and Kate more for mental health than any politician, any celebrity, any diplomat and ambassador in the world. And I think now we seem to be having discussions, and early on in the week I was on the call with a great group of people from around the world, from Korea to Dubai to Moscow to New York, about sort of importance of mental health in the times of crisis. Damiana, that's a great question, and I'm a great believer that this is definitely going to become a trend. Before this whole started, I was in talks with Dow Jones Media and the Wall Street Journal about the mental health in the corporate environment. I was just saying to somebody early on this morning that I'm going to reach out to these guys because now more than ever, the strength and the character is going to be incredibly important to remain confident, remain positive, embrace ourselves for the long-term whole, and be able to emerge stronger than ever.
Thank you. And we have one more question and 8 minutes left. So the question from, actually two questions now, from Victoria. Is it better to remain confidential or go public in business investment world?
It really depends. A good question. Really depends what one wants to disclose in terms of the business and world and investment opportunities. I think what we're going to see a surge of openness. I think business has been very confidential and almost very secretive. London is one big sort of secret circle for many people. It's very hard to break into that circle of elites and the best opportunities in the world. And I genuinely think that we will come out a lot more open. I think we will share opportunities a lot more openly than we did before. And I genuinely think, again, that's going to benefit the way in which actually we do business and coexist as a human race.
Great, interesting. Thank you. More question from Alex. Do you invest in startups, and how can a new virtual startup send their deck to you?
Thank you for the question, Alex. Initially, when we put together Mayfair Investment Club, we said we won't look at startups arena in the seed round, just because the ratio of success versus failure is incredibly high. And the whole purpose of our club isn't just to procure investment opportunities for the members and bring them to the table. It was more to actually get them to embark on the kind of educational but real life experience with investments, which will include investment opportunities of high growth companies that are mostly in series A, B, and C. So we're talking about 3 to 5 million, all the way up to sort of 10 to 20 million investment round, as opposed to looking at a startup community, which is already massively, I think, saturated with both startups, accelerators, incubators, by the same time with the investors, but it's business angels and the all early stage VCs. So for the time being, we will stick to our sort of goals and our structure that unless you are a sort of post-seed startup, we wouldn't be able to help at this point in time. but we'll always be able to point you in the direction of those investment networks that do look at startups, because I'm a great believer that the startup community and the ecosystem built around it is the driving force of every economy. We need entrepreneurs. I think we'll have more and more entrepreneurs coming out of this situation, this crisis. I think the whole world of entrepreneurship, like I've seen in the Balkans region, because of the war, people had to turn to their own devices and they had to create their own opportunities, because the labor market was pretty bad. And when there's a high unemployment rate, when people lose jobs or the companies aren't creating enough jobs for especially young, ambitious, well-educated workforce, then people have, and the youth have got to turn to themselves and do something about it. So I genuinely think this is also going to, just like with art, it's going to also create some amazing startup opportunities. So of course, there is an exception to every rule we do and we have, and that's also if we spot what I call a rough diamond in the making. If we spot a visionary startup entrepreneur who is trying to solve the world's problems in the right constructive way, who might have a track record or may not of success behind him or her, then of course we would entertain that prospect and be able to engage with them and see where that takes us.
So for example, if Alex has some new virtual startup, which is kind of very relevant nowadays, where should you send it for you to consider, for example? And try to...
I mean, obviously, they can send it to the info@mayfairinvestmentclub.com. We have a team that looks at any of the packs. As I said, I can't promise they will come back to everyone who does that. We try to make the club to be a lot more structured in the way of us reaching out to certain people that have been recommended and referred to us through our existing networks on the ground in London and internationally. But we can't stop people to reach out to us to general email and engage with us. Mayfair Investment Club will not have social media pages. Mayfair Investment Club will not be the gathering for all just because we want to create something that has the legacy. We want to create something that plays an important role in today's day and age, in today's society. We want to actually form the future leaders of tomorrow, and we want to play a role that isn't just about investment, but it's about education, and it's about the opportunities, and it's about the foundation that will play an integral part of it. So.
And we have a question from Marta relating to the club. So who can join the Mayfair Investment Club, and what qualifications are you looking at?
I mean, it's the club for 18 to 30 age group. It's not something that we're looking in terms of the qualifications. So we are going to be looking at the existing students currently studying at, from Regents to the London Business School, Cass Imperial, UCL, King's, Oxford and Cambridge. But more importantly, we're looking for the right mindset. We're not looking for just somebody who studied business economics, wealth management, family office, whatever degrees people might have done. I'm very interested in those who have done humanities, those that have done sort of even history of art, those who have a genuine ambition to go into the world of investors, really understand the ropes of it, and put forward their own ideas, what it is they want to do and why they want to become investors rather than entrepreneurs. Of course, as any investment club, there's going to be a sort of characteristics and criteria, not just to do with the fact that you have to commit $500,000 to $2 million into the hard sort of financial commitment to be able to invest and build your portfolio. But more importantly, you've got to be able to sort of fulfill the obligations when it comes down to the longevity of your involvement with the club. We don't want to club to sort of have people that are in and out. We just really want to attract the right mindset of the people that are very much in tune and aligned with our own ambitions and our own purpose in the world.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And now it's 1 p.m. So last tip, the last question. Which book would you recommend us to read? in this situation? We have.
I would. That's something I'm not prepared to answer. But the book that really jumps at me right now is the book called The Good Book.
Whoa, never heard about it.
And it's written by Professor Grayling, who I mentioned early on in the conversation, who I had the privilege of meeting face to face. It's about the book of connecting with the belief system. I think in the times of crisis, those who believe, whether you are a religious person, a spiritual person, atheist, whatever your belief system is, I think it's important that we rely on it, because in the times of crisis, those who believe in God, in higher good, in this higher spirit, whatever it is, actually manage to deal with any crisis much, much better. And I think what I picked up from the book of Professor Grayling is that no matter what that belief system is, use this as the opportunity to enhance it. Use this as the opportunity to come back to the basics. Use this as the opportunity of reflection, because we have lived in such a fast-paced environment, I believe, for too long. This is the first time that we have actually had to slow down. Although I went to bed a couple of nights ago at 4 a.m. and I was up at 7 doing a 5K run. I've never been busier out of choice rather than out of the fact that I have to do things, because I'm now also self-reflecting. I'm now also taking time to talk to the people that I perhaps missed to talk to a year or 2 years ago. And I'm constantly self-reflecting and meditating in a sort of environment that allows me to really zone in and zone out into the things that actually matter to me and to matter to society.
Great, thank you very much. It was very, very inspiring, and we are good with the timing. So guys, thank you very much for joining us. We had around from 15 to 20 people pending all the time, but thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Samir, you as always, you're an amazing speaker, I told you this. So guys, if you have any questions, you can still write it and I will pass it to Samir a bit later, okay? So I think that's all. Have a nice day. Hope we'll be able to do 5K run as you soon. I'm trying to do, but I do just 3, once per 3 days. But yeah, I'm going there. Do you want to say something in the end?
Yes, I just want to thank you for really making this happen. I love your work ethic and the fact that you don't sit back and complain, you just make things happen. I think this is a great starting point, and I'd love to thank the entire audience for all of their questions and all of the input. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with every single one of you going forward. And let's hope we can use this opportunity to go behind the common purpose and the common ambition to make success in whichever form it comes. So wish everyone a great day, and speak to you very soon. Thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you guys. Bye.